Call meeting to order. I'm watching the official clock says it's 8:58:52, but I'm told that it's slow. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll get everything underway. Welcome everybody. We have an apology from Mayor Sandra. I'd like to move that apology. Have you seconded? Thank you, John. Both these right from Gary. Public forum. We have people that said they were coming for public forum, but I don't think anyone's turned up. So they must do it again, so we'll do that. So we have any items not on the agenda? We have no items not on the agenda. We have any conflicts of interest? We have no conflicts of interest. We move on to minutes for confirmation. And the first ones are Coromandel Community Board minutes. Any questions on those minutes? I have one, and that is clause 3, proves the current extent of the Waikanae Valley Road identified in the maintenance expense program performing recognising uniformly. I just want someone to answer me what that means. With no one here, I'm going to leave that, and I can leave my own, but we'll give you the right answer. Yeah, well, there's no one here that can answer it, so I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and we'll come back to that. Yeah, that's right. That's all right. We can come back. Yeah. So we'll move on to the Mercury Bay Community Board minutes. Any on it? Tony,
yeah, I've got a comment.
Well, on Mercury Bay.
Excuse my voice, a bit husky. Can I just ask a couple of questions that have poked up in those minutes? One is the improvement principle of a seawall along Buffalo Beach. Is that right? And I just wondered, is this a new approach for putting hard structures in place?
No. No, it's part of the homeowners law, Kerry, and it's all part of that structure, and part of it is on council land, part of it is on private land.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I just wondered if this is a move away from the no hard structures along the coast, but obviously it's in principle yet to be approved, or is it just up for discussion?
Approved in principle, working with the homeowners, and they've got a hard wall. So
it's all paying for it. I understand that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I understand they're paying for it, but is this a move that allows hard structures on the coastline? Is this a new move, a new move away from what we were told?
Terry, there's always been the option for hard structures. So my understanding is the preferred option is a soft option, but where soft options don't do the job, then some other option has to be considered, and one of those is solid structures. And this one is a solid structure which is already there, that was not consented at the time, and then it got a retrospective consent, and that consent is run overdue, and now it has to be taken out and replaced. So that is what that exercise is about. There's nothing in our thing to say we won't use a hard structure. It'll be some. I'll say if you're looking at what's happening from Thames to Peru, the option there is probably a hard structure because there's not another option.
Yeah, I understand on the west coast hard structures were okay, but I understand on the east coast hard structures were not looked at favourably. And but if this has already been in place, I can understand if it's going to be replaced. But so you say it's an existing wall they're upgrading.
You hear me, Terry? Or do you want more information?
I just wanted a clarification around that. So if it's an existing wall they're upgrading, I can understand that. Yep.
So you're happy?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I've seconded that. Any further discussion?
Just the other point I want to raise is around the Grange Roads car parks going back to Ngāti Hei.
Well, that comes up in another paper later on.
It's in your minutes, but okay, if you want to discuss it later on, that's fine.
So you can discuss that on that under the agenda, okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, good morning. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Carry. Thames-Coromandel, Thames Community Board minutes. Any discussion? Oh, sorry, I didn't see it at the top of my page here. Thames-Coromandel, yep. Discussion, mover.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Terry.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sally. Any further discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. No. Carry. Right, now we move to Thames Community Board minutes.
I'll
Thank
second.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Sally. Any discussion? None. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. All in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. All in the dark, any more minutes?
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thames-Coromandel District Council minutes.
I'll move.
Thank you, Sally.
Yep.
Second, Robin. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Carried. Right, we'll move on now to reputation arrangements review, page 67. Welcome, Dale.
Good morning, everyone.
Aye.
Good morning. This has been well canvassed in our workshop, and I see it just follows the recommendations. So I'm going to ask anyone if they've got any questions before they ask them to move the recommendation.
Yes, if I could ask a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. We're bound by legislation, I know. Back in the 90s, they changed it. If you owned a property anywhere, you could actually vote. And now we have to make an application. Has there been any discussion or talks about changing that, or is it just going to be the status quo?
If I could answer that, my understanding, that's the non-resident ratepayer role,
Yeah.
is what you're
Yeah.
referring to.
Yeah.
My understanding, there's nothing in the wings to change that. So it's pretty much as it is.
Right, because one of the things is that a large number of non-resident ratepayers actually don't know what they can do to get at least one vote. And I've been for a long time asking the council, it'd be a good idea if we actually notified them of their right to be able to do that. And I think that's something that we might well be able to achieve, hopefully, and just let them, when we send something to them, just advise them this is what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought we did that and we've seen some race alarms in the past. So there's been for every election that I've been part of, endeavours have been done to do that, and indeed within communities, they've gone in their own wards to try and get people they know to pass that message on. So I think quite a bit of work gets done of that every year.
Well, that may be so, Tony, but I have heard from lots of people confused how the hell they can vote when they're non-resident.
People don't read when they get
Dale?
There isn't a legal requirement that council sends out an insert in rate notices, I think next year, before the end of August, I think next year. We generally send that out about whatever your third instalment is, if it's by post, and then we put it on council's website. So there is information sent to individual ratepayers outlining the what it's all about and the process. But I take your point, and particularly with your district with high non-resident ratepayers, it might be prudent to do a little bit more or a little extra sort of promotion of the criteria.
Well, thank you, and I think the council will support that, hopefully.
Thank you. Any other questions? Someone like to move the recommendation?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sally. Any further discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Item 2.2, page 81, review of the Easter Sunday trading. Morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
Welcome. Do you wish to say anything, or is there any questions?
Just that this policy has come up for review, and the idea of reviewing it a few months early is to give our employers sufficient time to consult with the employees whether or not they can work on Easter Sunday.
Have anyone got any questions of Rachel?
Excellent.
I'll have to move the resolution.
Yeah.
Tony said that Tony's moved it. Somebody seconded.
No, I second it.
Sorry?
I'll second it.
No, it's already been seconded by Sally. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Well done, Rachel. We're now on to page 98, 2.3. Eamon, welcome.
Take the report as read. Any questions highlighting that this is just for the plan change rather than a reverse consent or building consent process? It's just the plan change that we're talking about here.
I got a question, Eamon. And maybe the fact that it's just a plan change, but it doesn't. You said it didn't trigger significance or engagement. Is that because it's just a plan change and not going out for consultation?
I'm not sure if I can defer. I've got some advice on whether that did, and to be consistent with other district plan change, it wasn't considered to be a significance.
However, it is going to be publicly notified and the variation, so everyone will have an opportunity to be involved in the process.
That's what the reason.
It will be an own process.
Yeah.
Process.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry,
Thank you. Yep.
any other questions about?
I'll move.
Sally's moving the resolution
Very important.
and Robin is seconding it. Is there any further discussion? If no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Motion carries. You finished one, didn't you? Item 2.4.
This is just the presentation of the final SOI for Waikato Lass this year. The draft was presented on the 23rd of March and was open for comments at that time, and this is just formalising the process. From my perspective, there was only one sort of change that was made, to my mind, of any significance, and that was to identify the anxieties that do reside within different local authorities and can be a barrier to progress of Lass's activities in terms of the fear of change. The chairman's message was a bit sort of forthright from my perspective, that it was basically saying that the staff are blocking Lass's activities. I asked courteously from the chair if he wouldn't mind amending that to just say the staff have a high anxieties around change, and Lass needs to be more cognizant of change and the change processes that Lass inevitably throw up in order to try and take teams with Lass rather than compete against Lass. And the chair accepted that change, and you'll see that in the final draft, is that it does identify that Lass needs to have better change processes and acknowledge that staff do fear change, so we need to do things a little bit better from that perspective. So that's really the only significant change. Everything else is Lass is continuing to try and be transformative, acknowledging the fact that there is a lot of swirl in local governments. We still, as a board, believe that Lass can achieve significant progress going forward, particularly when we're looking at the future of local government. And Lass can be at the front end of some new activities, whatever they may be, rather than trying to change the way we've done it for 30 years.
The words are whatever that may be.
Whatever that
may be.
That's right. But I think Lass can play a significant role in helping to inform the TLAs in the region as well as to what that future could look like. So Lass is very much focused on the shifting landscapes and the ability to pull together quality information for the region's members and elected members.
Any questions?
I just got a question, if I can.
Yes.
Rob, I see that their message from the chair is that the heart of WAS was to identify and develop business cases.
Yes.
So how do they go about that? How do they identify and develop those? Is that information coming through from other councils to them, or they go out and source that development themselves?
Well, there's a number of different ways, Terry, but I would say that the main one is where GMs or chief executives have a particular idea that needs to be tested, and so they're workshopped with the senior staff within the local authorities and with the less senior leadership to see if an idea has merit, that it will be pushed forward for a business case. So there'll be a discovery So for good ideas, and the best idea, to give an example of what I'm talking about here, is the building consent shared services. How could we deliver building consents more efficiently and more effectively to our community from a regional perspective, rather than each individual TLA put their document together, go through the audit process. There's a whole sort of extra amount of work that we do in the region to facilitate that whole process. So the idea was, how can we do that more efficiently and more effectively? And so that goes to a discovery phase where we have a business analyst within LAS to say, look, if we can do this better, there is a prize here, and that prize may be a certain amount of dollars, and it might be a certain savings in other areas. If that looks as though the prize is big enough to actually expend energy and effort in terms of investigating, it will then go to a full business case where all the numbers will be examined, the region staff will be involved, and the final business case will be presented to the board, and then it would be presented back to the TLAs, for TLAs to then decide, do we actually want to implement this possible new form of business. So that's sort of how it works, Terry. And generally speaking, it's our own ideas that are put forward from any area of a council operation that get transported through a 2 or 3 phase discovery business case and then detailed implementation business case phase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? Property engineer, we received the report.
Yep.
Certainly here. And the secretary, Ms. Martin. Any further discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. The motion is carried. I am going to go back up to the road commission now. You still haven't got it? Yeah. No, fine.
Is that about the ministry?
No, it's the Waikanai Valley Road. It's a little bit complicated.
Can you answer that? Okay, we'll go back to that Coromandel Coal minutes. We'll just see if we can get that and get it tidied up. Page 3.
Sorry, I didn't answer you.
Welcome, Alan.
Sorry, I didn't answer you
Well,
before.
glad to see you.
When you retire, it takes a wee bit longer to make up.
It's just the 3. Approve the current extent of the Waikanai Valley Road.
Yeah.
And just, what does that mean?
So basically, that's recognising the fact that there's an unformed legal road there. So it's just recognising the fact that it is there and it is an unformed legal road. There's nothing more to it than that.
So there's no cost across the council from anything,
No,
any recognition.
that's right, and it's noted in the resolution as well that there's to be no cost to council, so that's actually included in part 3 of the resolution.
I could assure you there's no cost, but what it does, because it's the settlement coming up shortly, it's the plan that goes through, some of that road goes through dockland, that's just a matter of and getting.
I couldn't understand what the reason was.
And yeah, the only thing is that the road does possibly raise some expectations about council's future involvement. I understand from on that, but there is no cost to all of it.
Okay, thank you.
So there is, in part 4, there is a commitment there to re-examine the priorities of our roading extents project, which doesn't have any budget at the moment anyway, I think, does it, Bruce? So,
A number of years.
Okay, you moving that, John?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Second, thank you, Sally. Any further discussion? Please say aye.
Aye.
No, carry. That's all I need to do. There. Now we're looking at the LGFA. Sorry, we're not. Yeah, LGFA. Safety of the 10.
I'll handle this in the room for now. Donna's online if anybody wants to ask any questions. This is a very procedural matter just to approve the statement of intent for the LGFA. I do know, just as a side issue, that there has been some discussion through the waters reform programme that the LGFA may be offering loan services to financing services to the new water utilities or new water entities. At this point in time, that's not an issue to be concerned of in terms of this document. This is a business as usual document. because if the three waters utility organisations ever did go near the LGFA, then it would require a complete constitution change. It would need things to happen, new legislation. So the loose talk, let's say, around the traps in terms of the three waters funding and the LGFA, there is no link. There may be discussion in the background, but it's not something to be concerned of at this point in time.
Any questions?
But presumably, depending on how the three water reforms happen, if there's government taking some of that council debt away and the assets of the council dropping, then there may have to be adjustments around how much councils can borrow, because we'll be borrowing more than the.
Absolutely, because our asset base will drop, our borrowing powers will change.
Yeah.
So therefore, the LGFA will adapt. I mean, we're shareholders in the LGFA. There's about 30 councils within it. We will work that through with the LGFAs. But this is a business as usual statement of intent as it currently stands.
I think, Martin, this is where I have concerns personally. The devil is in the detail. Is what the government is going to take over. Whatever funding ratios with the LGFA are going to be, the LGFA are noting in their report that it's going to have a huge effect.
Correct.
So it's yeah, something to report. Any other questions? I would like to move the receipt of this report. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, John. Any further discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Right, we move on to item 3.1, grain trade handover. Well, Alan.
Thank you.
Again. Do you want to take us through? Were there any questions? Everyone read it? It's a fairly simple matter. It's explanatory in the paper. Anyone have questions to Alan? Or do you want to make any comments?
No, I don't think I need to add anything further. Hopefully it's all quite clear in the report.
Yeah, I'd like to make comment if I can. I see that it's generating $84,000, and when they hand the assets back, you say in your comments you're going to protect the council assets, and I just can't understand how that's going to be protected if you're giving them away.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing in there that says we're giving them away, Mr. Chairman. It just says that the Chief Executive will negotiate with, the intent is that we will negotiate with the Department of Conservation in relation to the transfer of the council assets back to them when this contract expires, which is not until December 2022, so we're quite a bit ahead of the ball game here. We need to note, though, that when those assets were first put in place, they were partly funded by the Department of Conservation. They weren't entirely funded by TCDC anyway. So we'll work with finance and whoever else to make sure that the value of the council's asset is acknowledged in some way as part of the transfer back to DOC.
Acknowledged in terms of buying the asset back off TCDC? How do you say it's acknowledged?
Mr. Chairman, it'll be that the council's interest will be protected. So we haven't got into the full detail on that yet. As I said, there's a long way to go in terms of when this actually expires, but it's just getting it in place so that the council's approving now the authority for the CE to approve whatever final negotiations we end up with DOC. The initial indication was that the current net, and this is subject to input from finance and everybody else still, but the net value of the council's assets somewhere around $70,000. So it's not a major amount.
And still my biggest concern is that the ongoing parking facilities is maintained and keeps on operating.
I think you can be assured there's a very good relationship between Mekupe Community Board and Ngāti.
Yeah, we're well aware of that. So
We're well aware of that.
That's a huge benefit to council to keep that operating. Yeah, okay.
You want to come in on that? Anything further? I'm happy to move it. We are second. I'll second. Tony, no further discussion? Please say aye. Aye. Carried. Bruce, welcome. Page 197. Can I just run us through these?
Yes, good morning, council. So this is the carry forward report. The financial year is closed off from last financial year. All the invoices have been paid and things been sorted. And so now we know the confirmed amounts of how much we have remaining in budgets from the 2021 year that we now need to carry across to continue and finalise and finish those projects in this current financial year. So I think we've been signalling the large amount of carry forwards for quite a long time now, possibly even nearly 6 months. I think earlier this year we definitely talked about it through a number of avenues. I think even through Rob's report, chief executive report, as well as through our budget revisions that we did in March. So yes, I'm happy to take any questions on these. Hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory. There's quite a lot in there.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
So Bruce, it says you completed 81% of the budget this year, or in the last financial year.
Yes.
So carrying forward 19%. When you look at the budget in this year, what do you think the proportions of completing the budget in this year, adding 19% onto an already big budget of meeting of how much are you going to complete?
Yeah, so we, again, through the chair, good question. We always aim to complete as much as we possibly can. We know that there's always going to be issues, as there always is with any projects, whether it's you're building a house or you're building a sports ground or wastewater treatment plant. There's always going to be issues. So we just work as hard as we can to try and make sure we do as well as we can. So we don't kind of budget or anticipate to underspend by any certain amount. We always aim to spend everything, but know that it's unlikely we're going to get all the way there. But we do have a lot of emphasis, a lot of pressure on us. Andrew Bowden's in the room, project delivery manager. So Andrew and I work closely. Andrew works hard with his team to really make sure we can do as well as we can out of those budgets. Make sure we follow up on those commitments to the community.
I think Terry's point was more about capacity. So I've done 91%, which is fantastic. You know, the best in my time. So if we have another budget and we want to add 19% to it, do we have the capacity? I think that's what Terry's probably referred to.
Okay, so apologies, I misread that.
I'm just thinking that's what I am from Terry's comment.
Yeah, so we worked hard, like I say, Andrew and I, and we've got some serious pressure on us to deliver this large capital program. But we've done a number of things, pulled in some additional resource, external project managers that Andrew's pulled in to make sure we work hard and deliver on it. We've also got some quite large projects within our large program. So we've got large projects, which means we can deliver quite a lot of money quite quickly. So we've got some big projects like the water meter projects, which is a $2.4+ million project. That a large portion of that is purchase and supply of meters. Yeah, so that's very quick once you've actually gone through the process, which the team are in the procurement of that at the moment. Once you press the button and say this is the supplier we're going with, the expenditure happens quite rapidly. We've also got the drinking water standards project that's still progressing, which has been going for a number of 3 years now. And so again, that's large dollars that we can spend quite quickly. So yeah, so we're comfortable that we think we've got everything under control.
It seems to me, Bruce, it's quite a big number. You know, if you say already this year we knew we were going to hit our budget, say 20% off our budget, add another 19% to it. It looks like a very big number when you look at the end of the year, next year, at the end of 2022 financial year. So are we being a little bit optimistic trying to put this kind of number of capital projects through and knowing that we're not going to get there?
Well, what I'd say through the chair to that is we don't know we're not going to get there. The other thing I'd say is that through the LTV process, we did, if you remember, have a must-do list, and we had a nice-to-have, and we had a lot of nice-to-haves all come back in, which has pushed our budget up, which we all talked about at deliberations and the decision-making, and we were comfortable that we'd put our best foot forward and work really hard to make it happen. So, and again, like I say, we've got a lot of large projects, a few large projects in there, Kopu Marine Development, as well as those other ones I've mentioned that mean that, you know, we've got a good chance of getting there, Terry. So there's probably not much more kind of assurance I can give you other than that.
Gary, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Bruce, how concerned are you about getting supplies and materials? Because what seems to be becoming very obvious that we around the country we're running out of supplies and by the time we get them, it's all going to be changed with prices going up, and it's a real worry. Are you concerned about this?
Yes, so through the chair, I am concerned about it, Gary. It's definitely it's a risk that we haven't had to deal with previously with our capital programs. So again, we just have to do a bit more work on our contingency planning to try and plan for those risks. But it is very hard because you're 100% right. We just don't know, where we're going to go with some of these things. And you put the orders in, and you just don't know. There's a few things that we've done recently where everyone was saying we're never going to get supplies, and the contractors did manage to get them. And there's other areas where you think it's going to be no problem, and suddenly it is a real problem. So it really does introduce a real element of risk to our program, and we've just got to do what we can to manage that. And if we are having that issue, report it out to council as quick as we can to let you guys know where we're going with it.
Bruce, just a comment. Everything is completed about 80% of the capital budget.
80% of the annual plan budget, yeah.
The annual plan budget. Now, I think personally, in these COVID times, you guys have done a superb job.
Thank you.
I know the stuff I'm involved, trying to get contractors, trying to get stuff moved, trying to do that has been extremely difficult. And I think you should be congratulating your team for the job they've done to produce, to get 80% of that annual plan budget.
Thank you for that. I really hand over the credit to Andrew Bowden and his team really, and I know his team have worked really hard, and he's worked really hard. Yeah, we've
I did think that. I'd like to know, I'd like to, not like to talk that, I'd like to know.
Could I just go into back for the computer software and computer hardware component? Like, I know nothing about it other than without it, our business is severely handicapped. So, just that challenge of that non-sexy stuff behind the scenes is actually really important.
So I just had a question. So how is the priorities for these projects handled? So we've got the 19% of ones that are carried over, and then we've got our must-dos, and then our nice-to-haves. Is that kind of the order? I mean, I know you don't go, well, we're working on this, but
yeah.
How does that? Do you ever have projects that this time next year will be saying, oh, well, that one, is going to have to be carried over again, or how do you?
Yeah, potentially.
Should I comment on that? In terms of carry forwards, the rule I generally apply to that is that, and the accountants, because from a financial perspective, carry forwards really should be spent by the end of September. So it should be projects that are in train, they're very close to either going out with the contractor or they're underway and we just haven't quite finished them. There are a few on this list that haven't quite got to that point yet, but they're big ones, such as the water meter contract. It's a discrete project, it's a big sum of money. It would be foolish for us to say we don't need to carry that forward because actually it's government that are funding that project, so we might as well put best foot forward at whatever time of the year we can to finish that. So in terms of that $2.5 million project, we expect to finish that by February. That is normally too late from my perspective as a CE to approve a carry forward given through this type of list, because I would normally say if you're not ready to build it in the first 3 to 4 months of this year, then we should actually revise our whole programme and go back to square one and tell us when you are going to build it. So I think we can gain the assurance from this list here that most of these will be finished before Christmas. If they're not, there's a really good reason why, because we can link it to projects that are in this year's programme and combine it with contractors that are running this year's projects and gain the efficiency through that tender process to actually try and deliver these carry forwards alongside the tender process this year. So it's, generally speaking, carry forwards are spent very early on in the year, and annual plan is delivered throughout the year, which we keep a very strong eye on, and then we have to deal with the things that get introduced through the year. So if I have any advice in terms of how we go this year, I would say we need to be really limiting the amount of additional work that we do bring into the programme this year. Last year we brought in a significant amount of extra work, and albeit that a lot of it government projects such as Coco Marine, such as the water meter programme, we get a lot of money thrown our way. We have to be very careful how we assess new projects in this coming year if we go for out of budget cycle approvals. Out of cycle budget approvals, because we need to be cognizant of the fact that we do have a little bit of a bow wave. I wouldn't have it as a massive significant bow wave. We've been speaking about this bow wave for a few months now, and we've made those plans, particularly with those bigger projects like the water meter type stuff. So hopefully that helps to understand how it all sort of slots together. That makes sense? Yep. And the water meters, we've now got them. We're not going to be waiting for those to be delivered.
We haven't got them yet, but we're very close to that.
They're at the wall.
They're quite wide.
The back of the I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that.
But it's interesting to think with COVID, I know streetlights, I'm told about February, we're going to get streetlights. Because all sorts of things are held up with. So that's where I think you've done a lot. Any other questions? Does everyone approve the carryovers and the out of budget?
Yep.
Someone like to agree with Dave? On favor? John? Thank you, Dave. I'll second. Tony? Any further discussion? Vote is aye, contrary no, carried. We're now come to Chief Executive's report, page 202.
Thank you through the chair. The report has sort of got quite a lot of information in there, although we do know that on the periphery there's an awful lot more, particularly in the 3 quarters. Or should I say, there's a whole lot of chatter. Information is still in the development phase, let's say. So from the perspective, let's start with the 3 waters. I've mentioned it a couple of times. I know Rex is working really hard, and you'll have a pint after this. From the 3 waters perspective, Rex is working really hard to pull together what information is available. And we're targeting a workshop in the 24th of August to really sort of sit around the table and say, right, what do we have? What do we know, and what sort of thinking can we apply to that? I don't think at that point in time we'll be in a position to make any recommendations about what we do or where we go, but I think we just need to get ourselves all on the same page, because it's such a moving feast, and we get lots of different information thrown our way. That it's an incredibly unwieldy beast at the moment, but we're just sort of trying to harness everything together. So a lot of mayors are taking position. From my perspective, I think it's too early for people to take positions. It's just pay attention to what's going on, and we'll pull everything together so we can actually be a lot more informed about what's happening. So that's 24th of August. In terms of the financials, you'll see the provisional year-end report on there. To my mind, that's a very positive year-end report with, $5.5 million surplus projected at this point in time. That is significantly good. However, that again, because it's provisional, things can happen. So that figure could vary by up to $1 million if valuations or depreciations or those sorts of things skew off in the unusual direction. So we'll work with our auditors and we'll keep you informed as we go. But we're very optimistic as we've reached this point in time that those will be pretty close to the end result, which is a great result. And again, I sort of highlighted the annual, program in my report as well, because I mean, thank you for the statements earlier on. I think an 81% achievement on the annual plan this year has been fabulous. The team have pulled out all the stops and got there. And what's led to most of the carry forwards is the fact that we've approved new stuff this year. We just haven't had the time, particularly with all of the stuff going on. We just haven't. This year's work that's been introduced. So, Andrew's cognizant of that. We've already started work on next year in terms of what are we going to deliver in July, August next year in terms of getting ahead of this bow wave. Because one thing from my perspective, when we're planning these capital programs, an 80 to 85% delivery is a good thing. I would always prefer a 90 to 95% delivery. But if we do have a bow wave that goes over to the next year, we either have to deal with it or we have to push it out completely and reprogram the whole thing, because we can't afford to get into this situation where we continually have bow waves and rippling on into future years, because that actually is not good, it's not transparent, and it just creates chaos for the teams in terms of what are they trying to manage. So Andrew is already working with his team to see, okay, what can we do? Because we know we will have some carry forwards next year. We have to plan for that. But what are we doing now to make sure that early next year, that isn't the issue that we needed to discuss? So hopefully that gives them sort of assurance that we're already having those conversations. The only other issue really, we've got the two big government funded projects which are still progressing, which is positive. They're in the right space, which is positive. We're hopeful that Copeland Marine will actually be able to get underway fairly soon. We're lodging the fast track resource consent very soon. We've got the ability to do that now, so it's a positive news story. And then we have the Housing Acceleration Fund. We've got a very good relationship with Aurora. They are incredibly supportive. They believe that Thames and Thames South is very well positioned in terms of their policy and their direction. So whilst at this point in time it's difficult to disclose any substantive results from those discussions, we are hearing all the right noises right the way to the very top, the chief executive level in Aurora. So we are very optimistic in terms of where they'll be able to drive that particular project in the future.
I got a question.
Hang on, Martin,
Yeah, I just wanted to check in the previous report that talked about Copeland Marine Development. That fast track consent process was unsuccessful. Is there a difference between the fast track consent and the resource consent?
The Copeland Marine was always accepted for the fast track consent process. One of the issues, we hit a potential roadblock, and the roadblock was one of wetland. The new wetland rules that were published 2 months ago, they actually threw a stick in the spokes of that whole project, because obviously by being on an estuary, it's inevitable there's going to be some form of wetlands somewhere around that area. But the problem with the new wetland rules, they said basically if there's a wetland, then the project can progress no further. So that was a door shut in the face. However, there was an out, and that was where the project, so long as it's considered as regionally significant infrastructure, then you actually have the ability to lodge for the consent. So the team have done an awful lot of hard work behind the scenes. There's been a bit of a legal discussion going on between ourselves and the regional council. Unfortunately, we've all got ourselves very well aligned, and I have to give credit to the regional council. They have been very positive and very supportive in this environment to allow us to progress to that fast track consent process on the basis that this Copeland Marine actually is regionally significant infrastructure, and therefore it gets through the door, and then we enter that resource consent process. So that's a really positive move forward. Credit to the team and the regional council for being incredibly supportive through that.
Rob, Kerry, you had a question?
Oh yeah, just a quick one to Rob on page 210, the wastewater. You say that desludging hasn't been budgeted for. I just like a comment on that, please.
What did you say? Where's that in his report?
Page 210.
Point 7. Yep.
I can't say so through the chair. The wastewater desludging is an operational budget, so we don't carry forward operations budget. That was money that was in the 19-20 year. The program wasn't finalised due to COVID. Since the shutdown in March, the last 3 months, 3-4 months of the year. So we didn't carry it across as OPEX, so then we needed the budget back in the 2021 year to carry on with that desludging.
Okay, so operational thing, right? If it's an operational, I thought if it was a budget line, it should have been there, but if it's operational, I can understand. Yep.
Rob, just a question on the three waters. And I've heard anecdotally that the government says they're going to take over external funding. So what need we got to on the three waters, projects on the three waters in terms of funding, and what's our liability?
That's right. So what we have to do is we've got to look at our external borrowings, which is 61 million, and the government, and this is not that's our overall borrowing, not just in relation to three waters. And we have an internal borrowing of $87 million, and the government has only publicly stated that it will take over that external borrowing. Yeah. So again, as we gather more information and as we have more discussions with Wellington behind the scenes, we need to inform you about the risks of.
And you know that now what we've got.
I don't know the actual position yet in terms of My assessment at the moment is that we have about $60 million worth of borrowing that relates to the three waters. That's what I know. I don't know what the
You don't know what is internal external.
Donna's still working through those figures for us. Yeah.
I thought they'd be pretty, I thought they'd be pretty. And just to comment there, there has been some discussion, Sandra and I talked to Robert been in there, when we go public on the three waters, but we believe Sandra wants to go public, I believe we need to get more information.
Yeah.
Or what's happening, so I think we're
Yeah.
at the moment, and I know I've been asked to comment on any of it, but we like.
The way the government's operating is that there's left field things coming out at every opportunity. And my main anxiety about whether we declare statements too early, effectively dig a trench too early, that we find ourselves not being able to climb out of down the track, particularly when the government seems to be so free and easy with money. So I would rather be very cautious in terms of what we say, take an active part in what is happening without making any commitment, because our communities ultimately will be the ones that decide where we need to go on this, or we would hope our communities will have a say. But again, if at the last minute the government decides it's going to throw another wad of cash around, then we don't want to have sort of fallen by the wayside because we've made unfortunate statements at any given time during the discovery phase, let's call it. So I think it really is important around this table for us to be cognizant of the chaos, but make ourselves as informed as possible before we do form any very, very strong positions. I think we're all pretty much on the same page that these are community assets. We want our communities to be fully informed. We want our communities to be part of the process. But those are the big picture items. At the moment, we're still working through lots of detail that hasn't even been written on paper yet. So we just need to take a bit of time.
Rob, can I just go back to my previous question? But from a treasury perspective, you know, you've got a risk out there. Will that risk be reported to the audit committee on the 12th? Because I believe there's a huge risk if with our internal borrowing, we're at a huge risk. Now, that work will be done.
Absolutely. I can assure you that the management team, the leadership team have discussed that very issue, and the way we report it through to council is very important, because at some point we may need to have that discussion. Do we go and borrow money to repay these reserves so that we can actually maximise what we get out of the money? We're not going to lose that opportunity.
And bearing in mind that all the, it's been slower than we all expected, but all the pointers are to integrate increases. So do we fix now? So, you know, I see a risk there that needs to come before audit, and we need to get these around.
I don't disagree at all. The other one is the funding. The funding formula that they're suggesting is based on census-like population in every TLA area. Well, of course, ourselves being 53% non-resident ratepayers, it's a massive issue in terms of infrastructure provision.
Yeah.
So we, and I know from my experience in Total, we always used to fall foul of this government theory that resident population was the way to distribute money, and it's not. There are 6 local authorities in New Zealand that are significant outliers when that type of formula is run. So the 6 of us behind the scenes, again, have combined forces to try and work with DIA through LGNZ and directly with DIA to say this is not right. The mayors have been lobbying behind the scenes in terms of we need to get this formula appropriate for everybody, not just a blanket, because this is about our communities. It's not about just one rule fits all. So they're on notice. We're working through those issues, but like I say, they seem to have so much on their books that answers are very sort of slow to come by. So but they can't move forward until they've actually provided all this information, because local government just won't be in a position to be able to move forward.
I see an analogy of this eroding. We're eroding and our stuff. We're told 46 of the weeks of the year we don't get a problem, so your roads are all right. 46 of the year our water's all right.
Yep.
And then we get a problem. Are we going to be treated the same? I think there's a lot of devil in the detail. Any other questions to Rob's report? We'll move on to the financials.
I'm happy to hear this pushback, because for me, it's a massive topic. But if you were given a job to start with, in the first place, be to understand the issues, particularly about the funding. I would say, like, it's hard to trust the people making these decisions because underneath it, there's underlying things. It's the lack of honesty in this stuff and others that will trip us all up. I would say, just come out and say, what is it? Right. I don't think you have to be very clever to understand how to fund this stuff. Up front, so I think the first thing I look at is the money. And so I don't know how you get the pushback, and I think more people have got to perhaps use their local media to say, just let you know, ratepayers, the thing we're struggling with is almost corrupt information that we're being given to deal with. And we can't help you at the moment. I would say, who knows what's going to be done? But for me, someone should be holding this government absolutely to account on this issue, because a fifth form economics student will work out where to start the money. It's not very hard, and the numbers are quite hard. So for me, I'd be going up almost right now next year and funding everything and taking it. And the voting costs us about another up to 1% more we're paying now on our borrowing at today's borrowing rate. So I'd be getting into that right now.
It's an incredibly complex issue.
It is.
And that is why we're so focused on trying to get ready for this workshop in a couple of weeks. Because a couple of weeks really won't make a big difference, but it'll hopefully make a big difference to what we genuinely understand around the table. Because even the staff who are completely involved in this process are really struggling with the quantity of information and the accuracy of information. So it's such an unwieldy beast. But again, the warnings have been given, and they were given again at the Local Government Conference this year. And I always go back to a statement or an old saying that Bob Harvey used to use at Waitakere City, which is the government proposed and the community disposed. And this government, if it continues with this shabby, for want of a better word, information process, then we're going to be sort of, the government will then find themselves at the community disposing end of the spectrum, which to my mind is unfortunate when we're talking about some of the most major infrastructure that we have in New Zealand with our free waters. It is incredibly important. We need to invest in infrastructure. There is one rule, completely one rule, is that we have invested in infrastructure as a country. We need to improve the way we invest, because we are going to go backwards if we don't. But again, the second, the thing that we need to consider is don't bugger it up trying to just get to an end point without actually getting that transition right. So, time is always a good servant when we have to do this major reform. And I just feel as though we're rushing way too much. And if nothing else, if we could only give this government the news that it's too fast, because the industry and the local authorities and the public just cannot keep up with that pace, with the dearth of quality information that we've got. So, like I say, eyes to the 24th of August. Let's see what we can find out at that point in time and start to see if we can form frame up some communications that we can put to our communities.
I hope to, this is a big discussion, and I'm looking forward to it for sure, but these are assets that the ratepayers own and paid for it. So a referendum, I think, is really important in this, and the decision-making board at the end of it has to be seen to be democratic. So I look forward to the discussion, because this is a big issue.
Like that, I think the issue is too big. Like a referendum, so you go to a population of 5 million, and there's only about 500 even agreed. So having a referendum, people are going to vote yes or no for what reason? And so a lot of these go on. People just simply, people often do their own game of race.
Their assets.
Know your rates, but haven't got the first idea what's involved about.
Yeah.
If something as big as that, a referendum would just be a waste of money, because the people, the issues, we don't understand, and we're excited. You're not going to make the decision and make it work.
Okay, we realise we've got a lot more on that. Do we want to work through the preliminary figures, page by page? No. Everyone relaxed? about those? That we're going to do preliminary, the annual account will come out, there'll be a judgment.
Yeah.
Is everybody happy?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. We will, someone move the receipt of the 10th executive report.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, John.
Yep.
All opposed, please say aye. No, carried. Now we do members' reports. Members' reports. Tony, do you want to start?
Yeah. Righto. So the things I've been involved in of late are the program management process, which aim on this team for the part. Yeah, another series of workshops. And as I've said before, the community input and participation of these is, for me, has been exceptional. And the other part is that I've mentioned in the meetings I've been the team that's running this done a fantastic job in the digital environment. So where you've got people either in the meeting or like me dialed in, to have this like instantaneous and spontaneous stuff in front of you that you can see, it's been a fantastic game of video in the team. And so we've got to that stage now where the issues are well recognised around the district and every part of our district. And some of the options are well recognised, and now it's getting to the stage about, you know, what will be the solution. So I'll raise it at our next meeting for today, so we can run that, please. When I was in Hamilton yesterday, I have asked the chair of the transport committee and his staff if they would give us time to, it's probably for you and someone else, to come and present to the Regional Transport Committee, purely because they are really talking about resilience and they understand the roading issues, and we have two people on that, in that committee, who are well connected in this area and understand our problems. So we need a process, I don't know, this for the staff of the committee to go to the appropriate people in Waikato to make a time for the next meeting to come and present. And so they can see what work we've done. One of 10 minutes, they work 5 minutes, 2 people 5 minutes each. So anyhow, that was that part. On the transport side of life, so these are pretty interesting. The National Road Network, so they got bids in for this group. So they've had 12% less for roads. So someone like me driving around saying, well, you can't talk about road to zero and safety if you don't maintain the roads. Because the other one is 1.38 billion going to Kiwi Rail, and part of that is also in the moral ferries. Of those that follow that, they say, why are we doing that? The private enterprise does this and makes a profit, and we've got a government organisation and they'll lose money, but not to worry. Well, the police reported, and it's interesting, they follow up on the roading things, saying the state of the roading network is not good. The bloody potholes that are around the place, and because it's on that committee, there's people on panel beers and people exposed. They understand what happens to these bloody potholes, modern cars with modern wheels, they don't bend the rims, they smash them, and they smash the suspensions, and it's the accidents and the road closures. So, but between a rock and a hard place, where you've got government on the expenditure somewhere else at the expense of the road network, and so I just expect a fair bit of work going on in the emissions and climate change area, and for our meeting tomorrow at the road, I don't really reinvent a wheel. The Regional Council have got a lot of good work being done on this, and they've got some quite good models. The only issue I raise with the models is they don't give you net results, so they can tell you what happens if you reduce. If you get 10% more people biking or walking or less people driving, what is the effect? What I'm suffering to is, tell me about the other side of it. So if you want to replace the cars we drive today with electric cars, what is the environmental impact on making a car and what out of it and disposing of it? Because there's another side to it. So like a lot of people, they provide you with information to support their own agenda, but there's a lot of it. I've raised the issue of private licensing again, so that is now 35 days. Well, just they haven't got people, just the case. And also, Thames, that really, I'm saying, that's tent. We've got 1,000 kids at school in Whittianga.
Yeah.
So we need someone to come to Whittianga on support line. Yeah, it's a resource issue, and I just don't think they seriously take what a driver's license means. You know, when I got mine, you know, that was a bit of a lot.
Can you remember?
Well, maybe, but anyhow, so those things are well recognised. The thing more interesting to us is what's happening on Coromandel, the bridge. That work is well underway. The intent is to have a 2-lane or a walkway and cycleway. That is the intent. Whether that happens at the end of the day, we'll see. The Graham Street bridge, that is about to get underway, and the Hackaway Bridge, I think we've all read about that, but that will either be a major repair or replacement in time. It's got a 10-year life at the moment. All I would suggest is that we need to keep putting our case in front of them, and those things are happening. I also think we should probably start getting on the high ground, because there's quite a few people around here that don't want to work in the background. It seems to me that a lot of credit goes to the lobby groups who are actually very distant from what's actually happening. So, yeah, that's just me.
Any new?
I was going to say the other thing, the issue is for us, OTAM. So we're meeting on Thursday. They'll like to be at the bottom of that by then. Because I can assure you now that we are not. I say we're all legal in place. Some of more numbers. But when we say some are legal, without here we're saying that never consulted. So I just hope we get to the bottom of that. So we can put that smoke out. Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you, Tony. Shelley.
Just ordinary local things. I went to the Waikato Regional Emergency Management meeting yesterday afternoon. He was still recovering from getting to the road and the road works were so bad. I think more of the same really. Nationally, huge potential change in that area requiring legislation, etc., etc. And so it just felt like that was minor compared to, you know, what I'm interested in, which is 3/4 of health, etc. And so I've got a whole lot of detail here. The guy from Wellington did a very good PowerPoint, and it might, they're going to send that to me, and I thought we might see that at the committee meeting. So, but I don't think there's anything here at the moment, other than moving sirens and moving right along to Martha.
So one of the issues I've been looking at, PowerCo looking at how to increase the resilience of power supply on the peninsula. And their current plan is that it's putting more poles and wires in, which costs a lot of money and consent and take a long time. They're looking at spending $10 million on 3 diesel generators on the peninsula, I think Coromandel, Tarangi and Whittianga. So I had a wee discussion on that because it just seemed, I ended up doing an online meeting with them to discuss that, because it just seemed that they put it out for feedback and they had 80-something% of people who submitted. It's quite a small number of people submitted on it, as Tony said. People don't understand what the issues are. 80% said, oh yes, that's good, we can have that additional power thing, but another 80-odd% also didn't like it, probably the same 80% because of the environmental sustainability thing around these generators. So they are going to be coming back with possibly some other options. They have put they've asked for proposals from some companies around batteries and solar farms, but yeah, it just sort of seemed a bit odd these days to be thinking about diesel generators.
We use coal.
which would run for a total of 8 days across the whole year. So, also, of course, this time of the year, there's lots of AGMs. I've been to a few so far, and there's more of those to come. I do like the AGM because a number of times the groups ask me to join their committee, and I can just say, oh, no, it's best because I'm a councillor, so I do enjoy that option out there. Also went to the destination Coromandel. There's a project called STAPP, the Strategic Tourism something or other, and so we, the panel handed out a little bit of money for some, to keep some strategic tourist operations keeping ongoing. And the other thing I went to yesterday was the COVID vaccination centre opening in Goldfields. And the thing that I got out of that was that they were talking about mobile clinics going to remote parts of the peninsula. And when they get there, they're not looking at those, the age bands, they're basically just saying, right, here we are in Kennedy Bay or Port Charles, let's rock up and get everyone vaccinated. So that seemed to be really good. And they've got a 65% vaccination rate for Maori in those areas. So that's actually really quite high. That's been identified that Maori and Pacifica as a particularly vulnerable population. Yes, actually.
Thanks, really, quite briefly. I just want to echo what Tony said about the shoreline management panel, coastal panels. I went to the Thames one and was quite impressed at the level of detail that the panels are understanding and getting into. And so that gives me a lot of reassurance about the entire process. So that's great. And the only other thing really, worth noting is that I'm already getting a lot of positive feedback about the campaign about food waste that started on the 1st. I've already had a couple of emails from people talking to me about how proactive I think that is. So well done, team.
Gary?
No, I've got nothing to add. Thanks.
Jerry?
Being vaccinated, I say to people, get vaccinated, get rid of MIQ and enjoy the Olympics. I'm all good. Thanks.
Thank you.
What's on the TV at the moment?
We'll be hard on time for the middle.
Gary, are you moving the receipt of minutes reports after that good report? Thank you. Seconder. Robert. Any further discussion? All opposed, please say aye. Aye. Carry. We've got about 5 minutes left, folks. Can we just carry on? Okay. Could I have a movement to go into public quiz, please? Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Martin. Opposed, please say aye. Aye. Carried.
Can we come on to the next screen?
Sorry.
No, you just need to